Hello, hello. I'm back with round 6 from the 2025 Reykjavik Open. For this game, I was paired against Robert Muench, who is rated around 2027 from Germany. And going into this round, I had 3 out of 5, just coming off a very difficult loss in the last round, so I was definitely hoping to bounce back in this game. Now, this was a morning round, 9 a.m. start time, so not a ton of time to prepare for this game, very little. But I did have a chance to check out my opponent's games, and I decided to play e4, my main move that I've been playing for at least this tournament. Here, black played c5. This is kind of what I expected, knight f3, and now g6. So black is going for the accelerated dragon, which I did not prepare, but against this move order, I do like this system with c3, so I decided to just play it here with white. Black played d5, which is, I believe, the main move here. So white is essentially now playing like a c3 Sicilian, but only after black has committed to g6, which is not such a useful move often in these positions. So c3, d4, white tries to build a nice little pawn center. So d5 is quite critical here to challenge white's space before it gets too strong. I pushed e5. And normally e5 isn't so great in the c3 Sicilian, but here with g6 and knight f3 included, it actually does make more sense because this pawn can restrict black's pieces quite a bit. So here comes knight c6, this is the main move, and now I played bishop to b5. It's also possible to start with d4, and then after something like bishop g4, white would play bishop b5 anyway. And this is a pretty interesting structure. I mean, this is theory, so black is definitely doing fine here, but definitely white can pose some problems. Because it's a strategic position, white has more space, and so black has to play against the space advantage and find some counterplay in the future. I decided to start with bishop to b5. I think it doesn't make a huge difference, but here black played queen to b6, so not bishop g4, d4, which would kind of transpose, but queen b6 attacking the bishop. And at this point, actually, I started thinking, because I wasn't quite sure what I should do here, probably white should take. Actually, I looked at this briefly after the game, just checking the database for the theory here. And it probably makes sense for white to just take right away. And I was thinking maybe black takes back with the pawn to try to get like bishop a6 and open up the b file. But this position I was looking at probably is a little bit more pleasant for white. So if bishop a6 or bishop g4, I think white can put the pawn on d3. And then black's light square bishop actually isn't that great here. Okay, there is queen to b5, but I don't think this actually works. For example, c4, let's say takes, and then knight a3. And white can even maybe take on c4 with the pawn, and then black is going to have just a very bad structure on the queen side, and this light square bishop is going to have a hard time opening up. So I think, like, yeah, this looks pretty reasonable for white. Maybe I can even take with the knight too on c4. So definitely, I think I should have just taken right away and castled, followed by d3, maybe knight bd2, and I think white can fight for a small advantage. But instead, I decided to play queen e2, just kind of flexible, defending the bishop, hoping my opponent plays a6, which would be kind of a waste of a tempo because then I'll take, and I got black to play this not very useful move a6, and I won some time. But of course, that didn't happen. Black played bishop g4, which I think is very logical. Castles, and now bishop takes f3. And because my bishop on b5 is hanging, I have a choice. Either I go gf3, which looked very, very weakening, or I can also give up my bishop with bishop takes c6, which I decided to do. Queen takes c6, and now queen takes f3. And so this position is probably equal with best play, and I think black has a couple different moves here. It's not so simple for black because like the bishop on g7, I would say doesn't really stand super well in this structure. White's going rook e1 or maybe d4. And if black plays e6 to develop the bishop this way, well then black has played both e6 and g6, and so the bishop is going to go to e7, but then there'll be dark square weaknesses on the king side. So I'd say this isn't the simplest position for black to handle. Maybe they can try like c4 or something, you know, I was thinking, but I'd probably just go d3 or d4 here as white. And if black doesn't take, then I have a very nice pawn chain. It's kind of like an advanced French. It may be a good version of the French for black, but or at least a decent version. But white also has counterplay. Now black has closed themselves up on the queen side. Or if black takes on passant, queen takes d3, I think white can certainly fight for an advantage here, trying to bring the knight to d2, f3, maybe knight d4 as well. So yeah, I was kind of expecting, I guess, one of these moves, bishop g7, e6, or c4. But then came a big surprise, d4. And my opponent actually played this kind of quickly. He only spent Yeah, 23 seconds here after spending, a couple minutes on his first few moves. So I wasn't sure if this is some theory I wasn't aware of or just over the board inspiration. But yeah, optically it didn't look great because when I take on c6, b takes c6, to me it looked like this endgame was just really good for white because black has a lot of weaknesses, and I'm actually better developed here because I've already castled and I'm going to be much faster to connect my rooks. So to me, d4 honestly just looked like a strategic blunder just going into this endgame, which looked very, very bad for black. And I'm kind of forced to go for the endgame because if I don't go for the endgame, then black's queen on c6 is going to be really strong. And of course, I have a hard time developing the queen side. But I was very happy to take on c6. And at this point, I was considering a couple different options here, including c takes d4, which I thought might be reasonable. For example, if black takes, let's say d3, the idea would be to just slowly develop the pieces, like maybe bishop comes to f4, knight d2, knight c4, or e4, and then eventually the rooks just kind of pile up on the c file, rook a c1, rook c4, rook f c1, and yeah, long term this looked pretty difficult for black to hold on the queen side because my pieces are just faster and I have good squares. Ultimately, I wasn't like totally sure what to do here, so I decided to keep it flexible with d3, keeping the option open to take on d4 or even to play c4 at some point and fix black's c-pawns kind of like Nimzo style, and then try to bring the bishop to a3, knight to e4, and let me make some arrows here. So it would be like c4, b3, bishop a3, and then knight d2, knight to e4, and then it'd be very hard for black to hold the c-pawn. So that's one idea, or I can think about just taking in the future and then playing on the c file as well. Or if black takes on c3, I'll go knight takes c3, and then rook d8, for example, bishop e3. If black takes on d3, I can go rook d1 here, or bishop takes c5, and white is just much faster to get to the queen side here, and it looks like just a very, very good endgame for white. So in the game, black played bishop g7, attacking the pawn, and I was thinking about bishop f4 here, but I thought rook e1 is just more flexible. The rook is quite useful on this square. And at this point, yeah, I'm still not sure if I want to take on d4 or go c4, but probably I'll make up my mind soon. We were looking after the game, maybe black could like castle here, looking for d takes c3. Probably in this position, I'd go c4, and with the bishop on g7, it looks very hard for black to defend the pawn on c5, because I have like knight d2, knight b3 coming, or b3, bishop a3. And yeah, in either case, this pawn just looks like an absolute goner. So yeah, it's hard to say how exactly black should have defended here better after d3 because yeah, it just looks wildly unpleasant regardless. But bishop g7 happened, rook e1, and now f6, just trying to open up the pieces here. And actually, at first I was thinking to take. I thought probably black takes with the knight, and let's say I go c4 here to kind of fix the structure. It did look quite nice for white, but I was thinking like knight d7, black tries to play knight to e5, probably I'd continue bishop f4. I was evaluating this position to be really, really good for white anyway. Maybe king f7, knight to d2, black can go e5, I'll drop back, or maybe bishop g5, but I have this amazing square on e4 for the knight, so it just looks like an absolutely dream Benoni, Nimzo kind of structure, whatever you want to call it, but I think white just has a really good version of it. But then I realized actually there's no real problem with e6. And e6 comes with a lot of advantages. It keeps the bishop closed. It keeps the knight restricted as well, because the knight would like to go to like h6 and then possibly f7. But now the pawn is cutting the f7 square. And if f5, I was thinking c4, knight f6, for example, the knight can't go to d7. So like black's knight is really, really kind of brutally restricted here. In this position, I would probably continue again, either b3 and bishop a3, or knight d2 first, looking for threatening like knight b3, for example. And yeah, really hard for black to hold on to the c pawn. Once I take one pawn, the rest of the queen side will kind of collapse in short order. So after e6 here, black decides to take on c3. I take with the knight. Now rook to d8. But this looked just really straightforward for white. Bishop e3. Rook takes d3, and now it could even take on c5 first, which I think actually was probably the simplest. I'm attacking the pawn. If black saves the pawn, then I think they're really just not in time. Rook d1, black has to trade rooks. I take back rook d7. I collect the queen side, and it's just completely over. Just black is not developing here. e7 will also be very hard to hold in the future. So on bishop takes e5, I didn't think black was going to save the pawn. I thought black for sure would try to develop here, like knight h6. And yeah, definitely this is still just a very, very nice endgame for white. Actually, this is, I think I was thinking f5 here, not knight h6. f5 here, let's say rook d1. And yeah, if black takes, rook takes d1, knight f6. I think probably white has a lot of ideas, but now it could probably take this one. Let's say castles come back, bishop c5, and white has an extra pawn. Still a huge advantage, I mean, decisive advantage. The a pawn is just running here, and it's just so difficult for black's pieces to fight against the queenside play because they're very, very far. Even though the bishop on g7 is now opened up, it's still super far from the queenside. So that was, I think, already kind of perfectly good enough. I decided to start with rook ad1, which I thought was also working. If rook takes d1, rook takes, then my rook is invading on d7 and just picking everything up. So black played c4. I took on a7. Knight h6, just trying to castle finally. And now takes, and rook to d1. I'm winning a pawn now. Black really can't defend this one, so castles, rook takes d3. And yeah, basically I thought this is more or less just over because I'm up a pawn and I have all the strategic advantages, and that was like bishop c5 and rook d7, just kind of everything in white's favor. So game continued, rook to c8. It's hard to suggest something else for black. I mean, there are other moves, but I think white's plan is pretty straightforward. Rook d7. Here black plays bishop f8. And yeah, I was considering this one, bishop c5, which I think is perfectly fine. If knight f5, I can go g4. Hitting the knight. The knight doesn't have any great options. Knight d6, I'm just taking. And e7 wins. The bishop moves and rook d8 comes with check. So knight h4 would probably be forced. And actually, I was thinking about f4 here. White could already take on e7. I mean, this is winning. If rook d8, rook d7, black doesn't get any counterplay in time. Okay, like maybe it's still a little bit annoying here. Not really. Rook d6, and yeah, I think white is just collecting. But yeah, I wasn't sure exactly how to convert. Let's say knight h4. I can also start with f4 just to cover knight f3 check followed by knight e5. So now knight f3 doesn't really have a point. I'll just move my king, and the knight is in danger of getting trapped. So this was possible. I thought, I don't know, maybe black goes g5, and then I didn't really see why this is so necessary, like f5, knight f3 check. Let's say, I don't know, king f2, knight e5, the knight comes back, and now stuff's hanging. The rook is hanging, g4 pawn is hanging, so this just felt a little bit unnecessary. I'm sure white's still totally winning here. Bishop b6 looks reasonable, but anyway, or bishop takes e7. Actually, there was probably just simpler because knight takes d7, pawn takes. I'm hitting the rook. If bishop takes, rook takes, then yeah, the e6 pawn is now super strong. Knight e4, knight takes f6 is coming. So I believe that was probably good enough. I can also go g4, knight h4, and then take the pawn on e7. Sorry, bishop c5 here, knight h4, and then just take. But I decided, you know what, a4. I mean, the way I win this game is by promoting my a pawn, so I might as well just start now. And I didn't really see how black is ever stopping the pawn. Basically, what I want to do is push a5, and then let's say bishop b6, and then a6, a7, rook b7, rook b8, and yeah, the pawn just crashes through. So here black played knight f5. And okay, I realized he does have actually a threat here. He wants to go knight g7 and knight takes e6. So I have a couple ways of dealing with this. I even thought about like just rook d1, rook e1, which I'm sure is fine. But then I found a much simpler way, knight e4, with idea to meet knight g7 with knight c5. And then black is just completely bottled up here. And then I have a5, a6 again, bishop b6, a7. And yeah, black's minor pieces are just not going to be able to deal with the pawn. So instead, black tried c5, sacrificing a second pawn, but just to get some possible chances. I think my opponent already understood his position was lost. And actually, this one did come with a funny trick. If I go bishop takes c5, which I definitely wanted to, then knight d6. And I have some back rank issues, right? So bishop takes d6 would be colossal blunder. knight takes d6 is possible because after pawn takes, I could go bishop e3 and just cover the c1 square, and then e7 is coming, so the endgame is winning. But after knight takes c5 or rook takes c5, of course, black now is threatening mate and the knight is under attack, but I realized even this is probably fine because I can just go g3, and then if black takes, I'm just pushing e7 and winning back the piece. And yeah, but okay, this rook endgame, it looks good. It's like extra pawn for white, but maybe white can convert a lot easier. So I decided not to allow that. After c5, I took with the knight, and now there's no back rank tricks. Black played knight to g7. I go g3. I realized black wanted rook c6 here and to take the pawn, but I also figured actually I can let him take the pawn because as long as I just start pushing my queenside pawns, his bishop on f8, rook on e6, they're never going to be in time to stop them. So I just went b4 here. Knight takes e6, takes, and yeah, I think there's many ways to finish it off. Like b5 is perfectly fine. I think what perturbed me about this one is, like, let's say black gives check and goes e5, and then if I push b6, bishop c5, I still have a little bit of work. I gotta figure out how to rearrange my pieces because I can't push b7 with the bishop on a7 hanging. I believe it should still be very much winning for white. In fact, okay, just this would be the simplest, right here, and take, and then push, and it's game over. But okay, at this point, I think white has a lot of ways to win. I decided to keep it simple, bishop e3, just not even letting the rook move, getting the bishop out of the way, and my two passers are just running. Black played rook a6. Once again, white has many ways. a5 is fine. b5 is also looking to be like winning just by force because black can't stop b7, followed by bishop a7 and queening, or bishop f4, bishop a7 probably. So this one is perfectly good as well. Although here, the one thing I didn't like was, let's say, rook b4, b7, king f7. And then if bishop a7, king e6. And probably this should be winning anyway, but like I wasn't totally sure. Rook c7, king d6. And yeah, actually it's not apparent that maybe white's not winning. I don't see how white's winning here. Because rook c8, black can just take, and both bishops are hanging, check, king d5. So this doesn't seem clear at all. So yeah, maybe it's good I didn't go for this kind of long forcing line. Instead, I decided to just keep it simple with rook a7. And now black has a difficult choice here. If he trades rooks, then of course bishop takes, let's say e5, b5, and black is never stopping these pawns. Let's say bishop c5 here, go a5, king e6. Let's say a6 now, king moves, bishop here, and yeah, actually, wait, I feel like I kind of made this a little bit trickier for myself than it had to be, because here black can play this one, and on a7, king b7. So hold on, wait, I kind of messed this up, my bad. So here I think just like a5 first should be good enough. Yeah, I don't really need to run the b pawn a6, king d7, bishop drops back, and yeah, now here, and yeah, black is not saving this. So black's other option is to go rook e6, but then I'm just pushing the b pawn anyway, and it's game over. So after rook a7, black decided to resign, which I thought was quite reasonable. Okay, let me just convert it in the simplest possible way. Let's say e5, bishop c5 is the simplest, and then there's really no intrigue. Black is just not saving this. If they took, then pawn takes, and yeah, this should be easily winning endgame. So yeah, that was it. I felt quite good about this one. I mean, to be fair, my opponent, really just made, I think, one absolutely crucial decision, d4, which ended up just being really bad because this endgame, I think, was just good for white in a number of ways. And then after that, I don't even think I converted in the smoothest possible way, but it was definitely good enough to win the game. So I was happy with that. Okay, it's a double round today, so I got another game coming up in just a couple of hours. As usual, probably going to be very, very tough, but I will be resting now, prepping a bit, doing my best for the game, and then hopefully seeing you back here for the recap. All right, thanks for watching. Until next time.